Last time on Movies and Lore, we discussed Sauron, how he was corrupted on a path to follow in the footsteps of his former master, Morgoth. Before we can discuss the creation of the Rings of Power, we must journey back before Sauron's corruption. Long ago, when the Valar first came to the physical world, they also entered Arda with their Maya. The Maya were usually linked to a Valar and were essentially their helpers and servants. Among the Valar was one named Auli, who was a smith, who in some ways was quite similar to Melkor, not in respect to evil, but in their mutual appreciation of things that were original to them. Early on, Sauron, known as Marion, served directly under Auli, and from him he learned all matters of crafting, which helped immensely in the creation of the Rings of Power and the One Ring itself. Melkor seduced Sauron, and he left the service of Auli to become the most trusted servant of the great Morgoth. In the Second Age, long after his master was defeated, Sauron made a plan that would allow him to control all of Middle-earth. He believed that the Valar had abandoned Middle-earth and that he was free to do as he pleased. One of the many abilities Sauron had was to change to many forms. Throughout the years, he's been able to turn into the form of wolves, vampires, and other creatures. This time he chose a fair form, with the intent to deceive the elves. He took the name of Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and he influenced the elven smiths in all manners of craft, same knowledge he had learned from Auli long ago. But for his own ends, Celebrimbor was chief among the ringmakers and did not realize Anatar's true nature. However, Gil-galad, High King, and Elrond did not trust him. But it did not matter. Celebrimbor was all that Sauron needed to further his goals. And so the elven smiths created Rings of Power. And their ultimate craft culminated with the 3 Rings of Power: Narya, the ruby-encrusted Ring of Fire; Nenya, the adamant Ring of Water; and Nelia, the sapphire-emblazoned Ring of Air. They were the greatest among all the Rings of Power, and its chief function was to delay the decay of time in the realms and areas where the bearer would wield their respective ring. However, despite Sauron not directly being present for their making, he was aware of their inner workings, which allowed him to do the next step of his grand plan. In Mount Doom, he forged in secret the final Ring of Power. Since the 3 elven rings were so powerful, he had to pour in the majority of his native power into it, which allowed him to perceive all things that were made by the lesser rings, and even master the very minds of all the wielders of the Rings of Power. The One Ring also created a link between it and Sauron himself. While the ring survives, he could not be destroyed, however. If one would destroy the ring, he would be reduced to such a low state that even Gandalf could never see him return from or affect anything in Middle-earth forever. Sauron completing the final step of his plan, he put the One Ring on his finger. The elven ring-bearers immediately were aware of him and removed their rings. They collectively perceived that if they had kept their rings on, that Sauron would ultimately become their master and would eventually be subject to him. Enraged, Sauron declared open war against them and demanded that all the Rings of Power be given to him, because without his craft, the elven smiths would not ever been able to complete their work to the level that they did. And so in war and conquest, Sauron obtained the 9 rings that he gave on to men, who were all warriors and kings of old of great renown due to their respective rings. They became the Ring Wraiths, who become invisible to all but Sauron with the One Ring. Slaves under his power and forever bound to him. Another set of rings were given to the Dwarf Lords, which ended up in failure due to their resistance to corruption. Some say that the reason why the rings did not work like it did with the men was that Auli taught the art of smithing to Sauron, and Auli also created the dwarves. Therefore, something innate by Auli, the art of crafting, and the dwarves themselves prevented the total corruption of the dwarves. But it didn't prevent them from gold lust and the lust for jewels and riches, which attracted many ills and evils, and Sauron in some ways was able to benefit from. And finally, the elven rings remained hidden, and he long sought them out, but never obtained them in the end. In the next episode, we will follow the history of the One Ring, from the fall of Numenor to its destruction in Mount Doom. If you like what you see here, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, friends.